Hello art friends, and welcome back to Art with Miss Wilkin. Today we're going to be creating a Valentine's themed project to lead us into the holiday, but we're going to base this project off of a famous artist named Wayne Thiebaud. And what Wayne Thiebaud is famous for is creating these beautiful, very detailed paintings of desserts. Mostly cakes and cupcakes and lollipops and ice cream cones, and he is the perfect artist to help us out and give us inspiration for our Valentine's Day project, because who doesn't love sweets on Valentine's Day? So we are going to be creating our own version of Wayne Thiebaud's cupcakes, and we're going to decorate them for Valentine's Day. So what you're going to need is a pencil, any piece of paper, preferably one that does not have lines on it, but if lined paper is all you have at home, lined paper works perfectly, and then something to color with. Today I am going to be using colored pencils, but you can use whatever you have at home, markers, crayons. If you want to just keep it black and gray with your pencil, that's also totally fine. So let's get started. Alright, so this is what we're going to end up with at the end of our project. You can see that I have gone with the style of Wayne Thiebaud. I have taken 3 cupcakes and lined them up as if they're sitting in a bakery window or on a nice bakery shelf somewhere, or even in a display case. And he likes to line his up evenly to try to make sure that each sweet is the same size and that there's a good even distance between them so that they don't overlap. So to do this, we're going to take our plain, or if you have lined paper, whatever paper you're drawing on, and we're going to start by creating some guidelines for ourselves to make sure that all of our cupcakes will fit and we don't have one that's gigantic and 2 that are super tiny. So to do that, I'm going to find around where the middle of my paper is, and I'm going to use my pencil to draw a really light line. And I'm going to draw a line on either side of it. And I want to make sure, or try to make sure, that they're about the same size. They don't have to be perfect. These are just our guidelines, but you do want to try to keep them as even as possible. If you have a ruler, you can actually measure out how large you're making your cupcakes. However, I think it's just as easy to use what you already have in your hand, a pencil. So I'm going to go in and see my line is about this long. So now I can take this, move it over, and check to see that my other lines are about the same length, right? To keep my cupcakes as even as possible. So, using my guidelines here, I'm going to start drawing the bottom part of our cupcakes, or the wrapper part. And I am going to show you, when you look at a cupcake or any dessert sitting on the table, it doesn't actually have a very straight, flat bottom against the surface of the table. It's a little bit curved, so you can see that it's not a flat object. It has dimension to it, right? So it's thick, it's got space. So we want to make these look a little bit more 3-dimensional. So instead of using this straight line as the bottom of my cupcake, I'm going to use it as a guide to draw a curve like this. And this is actually going to be the bottom line of my cupcake. I'm going to draw 2 lines going up from each corner, and I'm going to angle them a little bit, which means I'm going to make it a little bit wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And I want to draw these lines pretty light because I'm going to go over this with my colored pencil, and I don't really want my pencil lines to show through. So I want to keep them light so that when I color over top of it, you won't be able to see too many of my pencil lines. I'm going to go ahead and erase my original guideline. And then for the top part of the cupcake, I'm going to draw a super light curve. The reason I want to draw this super light is because when I add my icing to the top, sometimes it does hang over the edge a little bit, and it's a lot easier to erase parts of this line when we keep it light. So I'm going to do the same thing on both sides of my middle cupcake to create 2 more. Alright, so you will notice that when I did my curve, what I'm doing is trying to make it parallel or directly across from and matching the shape of that bottom line, which gives, again, the illusion that this is a three-dimensional object instead of a flat drawing. So now that I have my 3 cupcake bases, I can start adding my icing. Now, there's quite a few different ways to draw icing. I'm going to show you guys 3 different ways to draw it. However, there's no real wrong way as long as you give a good round shape to the top part of your cupcake and leave space for you to add your decorations. So we'll start with the middle. My favorite way to draw icing is so that it looks like it's been sort of curved and twisted onto the cupcake. A little bit more of a swirl than like a dollop. So to do that, I'm going to start on one side and I'm going to give myself a little C shape. And I still want to draw as lightly as I can. I'm going to match it on the other side. And then I'm going to go in and continue this curve like I'm going to make a circle, except instead of going around, I'm going to go over with a little wave. And I'm not going to go all the way to touch this. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. And then I'm going to do the same on this side, except I'm going to go over top. Then again, I'm going to add another C, except this time I'm going to take a little step in so it gets a little bit skinnier at the top. I see on this side. Again, I'm going to keep that curve going. I'm going to add another C on this side, but with this one, instead of going over, I'm going to go up and down to give myself a little point. So I'm going to go up and down. Right, so now it looks like the icing has been swirled onto the top of my cupcake. So for the cupcake to the right, we're going to do a super simple kind of icing, something that you might see sort of like an ice cream cone sort of shape, or ice cream on a cone sort of shape. So I'm going to do a large hill or rainbow kind of line. And then on both sides, I'm going to do that C shape again, except I'm going to make it stick a little further out. Right. And for the bottom part of my icing here, I'm going to have it go over top of this line. I'm just going to make it this kind of curvy, goopy kind of shape, right? Like the icing's not totally even. I'm also going to do a little something on this one, except I'm going to make it a little smoother. Go down and up. Like that. So back to this one. Make that a little bit nicer of a curve, and then this way I can add anything to the top of it and I have a nice open space. Finally, on this side, I'm going to show you another way to do a layered icing, except this time we're going to do it in sort of sheets instead of swirls. So to start, again, same thing, I'm going to use that little C shape on each side. Right? Except for this one, instead of keeping that line going, I'm going to do another C shape that kind of stacks on top of it, that goes a little closer to the center. And then I can go in the middle here. You see how this is like a broken line, and just do a little curve to give the illusion that it's another layer of icing. And then on the top, I'm going to start with a little point. It's going to curve down almost like a Hershey kiss. And then I'll connect these like so. And then again, I'm going to connect across the bottom here. I'm going to make it nice and smooth. So in most of these, you actually can't see the top edge of your cupcake wrapper. However, in this one, I do have a little spot that's peeking out. And to make that a little more interesting, I'm going to make it look like it has a scalloped edge, and a scalloped edge is that bumpy line that we see sometimes. So I'm gonna go in, and anywhere that I can still see the line, I'm gonna add a little scallop that's gonna just run right into my icing. Like that. Now, you can do that on all your cupcakes if you like to see that top edge of your cupcake wrapper, or you can have each of them overlap. It's entirely up to you. So now we've got our cupcakes all drawn out, we have to add our details. So think about things that you might see on a cupcake, or something that you might want to put on a cupcake that you're gonna eat. So things like sprinkles, cherries, other kinds of fruit, some sort of like extra frosting, really anything that you want, you can draw to decorate your cupcakes. So I'm gonna decorate these when I color them. So I'm gonna keep them plain for right now, but I'm gonna be thinking about what I might wanna add, because if I want to add any sort of fruits like cherries or strawberries, I should draw them first before I color. That way I'm not trying to draw a cherry on top of something that I've already colored in. So I think I'm going to add a cherry to this one. So I'm going to do a little circle and a stem. And to show that the stem is coming out of the cherry, I'm going to draw this little U shape and have my cherry stem poking out like that. Wonderful. And for my sprinkles, I can actually wait and just color those on top of my icing, so I'm going to leave this one plain. But on this one, I'm going to add a little drippy kind of line. So like a squiggle, kind of like this, to make it look like I've put some sort of extra frosting or chocolate sauce on top of my cupcake here. The final thing that we're going to do to the cupcakes before we start coloring and adding our detail there is we have to add some lines that go in the wrapper part, or the bottom part of the cupcake, going straight up and down, that show a little bit of the texture. And these lines, again, do not have to be perfectly straight, because it is a cupcake and they are not definitively perfect, right? On this one, because I have this little scallop edge in a couple spots, I'm going to make my lines come down from the points of my little scallops all the way to the bottom. And I am going to be coloring over top of this, so it's okay if my lines are still pretty light, because I'm going to draw them back in with a colored pencil. For this last one, I'm actually just going to draw some lines that don't even touch the top or the bottom. These give an illusion that the lines are there, even if it isn't actually striped. Like that. Then the last thing before I add my color is these need something to sit on, right? They can't just be floating in space. And to do that, I'm going to draw a line that goes behind the cupcakes. I can't draw straight through, right, because that will go through them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on this side, and then I'm going to draw a straight line, and I'm going to stop when I get to my cupcake. Pick up my pencil, start my line again, and stop. Pick up my pencil, start my line again, and stop, all the way across. So now it looks like they're sitting on a table. And when we go in and add our color, we're going to put a little bit of a shadow on one side, so it looks like the light's coming from one direction and they are casting a shadow down on the table. So get whatever you would like to color with. It is entirely up to you and whatever you have at your house or at school with you. I'm going to be using colored pencils because I think they're the easiest to shade with. And remember, shading is making something light or, making something a little bit darker or adding some depth and three-dimensional value to a flat drawing. So, before I start adding my color, I am going to go in with an eraser and lighten my lines a little bit, which means I'm just going to go in with this eraser. I'm not pushing down hard at all. I'm keeping it super, super gentle, and And I'm kind of just erasing where I might have some darker lines, but you can see that I can still see the lines that I drew. This just helps when I'm using my colored pencil so that I don't see my pencil lines underneath. Alright, so now I've erased a lot of my darker lines. I'm going to go back in with my colors and start adding some shading and some color to my icing first, and then I'm going to make the bottoms all the same color. Now remember, when you are shading or when you're trying to use darker colors in your artwork, it helps, especially if you're using colored pencils or crayons, to use pressure, which means you're pushing down a little bit harder when you want it to be darker. So as I go through, I'm going to draw my outline using my color. I'm just going back over those really faint pencil lines that I have left. And then when I fill it in, I'm going to be darker, so I'm putting more pressure, pushing down harder when I'm coloring close to the edge. And as I get closer to the center, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, which means I'm not pushing down as hard with my pencil. Right, and then I'm getting close to an edge again, so I'm going to push down harder. And if you have trouble doing this, or if you have trouble with your pressure and you want to practice, you can always use another piece of paper or the back side of this piece of paper to practice your pressure. So practice pushing down hard, and as you move across your paper, you slowly pick up your pencil and add less and less pressure to make it nice and light. Now, if you want to color these solid and you don't want to add any shading, you just want it to be one flat color, that is also totally fine. You get to decide what you want your artwork to look like. Alright, so you notice that my edges are darker, my center is lighter. It just gives a little bit of the illusion that there's some 3 dimensions going on. So as I'm looking towards the edge, it looks like they're going a little bit further away, and the center part here is a little bit closer to me. So I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom part of my cupcake. I'm going to choose one side and one corner to be a little darker. I'm going to keep the middle light, and I'm going to do like a medium tone on the other side. So I'm going to start with my pressure, pushing down relatively hard, and then as I go across, going lighter and lighter. Good, so now when I go back at the end, when I'm done coloring everything, and I add my shadow to this side, it makes sense because my light will be coming from this direction, right? So if my sunshine was over here, and the cupcake is blocking the light from being able to get to this part of the table, so this bottom corner of my cupcake is going to be darker, and then I'm going to have that little cast shadow on the table. So I'm going to add color to the rest of my cupcakes and give them some decoration. Once you add in all your shading, then you can go back through and add any kind of design or extras that you want to put on your cupcake, like sprinkles or any fruits that are sitting on top that aren't overlapping anything. You can also add things that maybe you wouldn't usually find on a standard cupcake, so maybe some heart-shaped sprinkles since this is for Valentine's Day, or lollipops sticking out of the top, whatever else you would like to add to make it your own. Okay, so once you finish adding all your color and all your designs and all your shading, the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little shadow to the left of our cupcakes. So the easiest way to do that is starting at the bottom. I'm gonna create a little rounded shadow shape coming off of my cupcake. It's like an oval if my cupcake were extended. And I'm gonna fill it in. The darkest parts of my shadow are going to be right next to my cupcake, and the lightest parts are going to be out towards the edge. Alright, so once you're done, you can add a color in your background. If you would like to, you can also color in your table. I'm going to leave mine white. And then you can look and see if there's any other details that you'd like to add or anything you'd like to change. But I would love to see what you guys create. So when you're done, take a picture and send it to me. I would love to see your cupcake creations, and I can't wait.